Welcome back. Hey, in this video, we're going to set up the finish activity, which should come up once we're done with the exercises. So you see here, the exercises are going through really quickly. And then we have this end screen where we say, congratulations, you have done the workout and you finished the workout. Would probably be a better sentence here. And then we can press finish and we go back to the start screen. So let's get started building that. Therefore, I'm going to go over to my project, and the first thing that I want to do is I want to make sure that here the rest time should have a rest timer duration variable, which will be multiplying with 1000 in here. So let's create this rest timer duration variable here. So private var rest timer duration, which will be a long that I'm going to assign 10 to by default, but in this case I'm going to use 1, so the rest timer will just be 1 second. And I'm going to do the same thing for my exercise timer duration. So exercise timer duration, which will also be a long, and I'm going to use it. Let me see, I've created an error here. I'm going to use it inside of this one here, where I'm going to use the exercise timer duration times 1000, which will make it 1 second. So basically I'm saying, okay, I want to make those 1 second long so that we can get through the different exercises and rest screens very quickly. Otherwise this will take forever for us to even get to this finished screen that we just saw. So let's go ahead and create a new activity. And of course you can try to implement all of the code that you're going to require now by yourself, because everything that we're going to do now is based on things that you have learned already. You just have to think of the flow, like what is the point where you want to move to this other activity? How do you want to make this activity look? So design it in the XML file and then also create the intent that will move you back to the start activity, which means the main activity. So that's pretty much it. All right, so I wish you all the best if you want to try it yourself, and I would highly recommend that you try it yourself, because this stuff is something that we've done so many times at this point that you should be able to do it yourself. Okay, so therefore the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to copy in the activity finish from my other project, and I'm going to quickly go over it because it really doesn't make sense for me to explain it in detail, because we have built many different layouts before. And let me just put it in here. You can see that I need a drawable here as well. Let me add this new drawable. That will be the action done drawable. So let me put that in here. I see action done, which will be this check here. Okay. So we need to have this finish activity for that. Let's create a finish activity. And I'm going to create an empty activity, which I'm going to call finish activity. And because I already created the layout file or copied it, I will not generate it. Okay, but if you are building it yourself, you should generate the layout file. Okay, so now I have this finish activity and I will need to set it as the content view and all of the good stuff. But let's look at this file real quick. So you see that we have this linear layout in which we then have a toolbar. Then we have this text view, which I call TV end. And then inside of it, we have another linear layout, which will have an image view inside of it. And then underneath a bunch of text views and a button. So this will just create this layout that we have here with the toolbar at the top, a text view, then this image view with another image inside of it, then the congratulations text view, another text view here. You have done the workout, and let me actually change that to you have finished the workout. So you have finished or completed. I think completed would be the nicest keyword here. So you have completed the workout, and then you have this finish button, which has an ID of button finish. Okay, so everything else you can really set it up however you want. You could even also use a constraint layout here. You don't have to use a linear layout with another linear layout, but you can also, if you are too lazy to build your own layout, you can just download this file. I believe you should, however, be able to build this yourself in your own way. Okay, so now inside of the finish activity, that's where the magic will happen that we need to set up. And we are going to require view binding. Okay, so private var binding, which will be the activity finish binding. So activity finish binding nullable object that I'm going to assign null to. Okay, and now we can set that as the content view. So first of all, we need to initialize it, and this will be activity finish binding inflate with the layout inflator as we had seen before. And then we can set the content view with binding.root. So this is also something that we have done multiple times before, and this is generally how you set up view binding with the content view. So now it's going to use this linear layout, meaning this activity XML file, because this linear layout contains the entire XML structure for our finish activity, because it's the root view or layout inside of this activity finish binding. Okay, now let's set up the support action bar. And we have set up an action bar before in our exercise activity. So let's look at how we did it here. Let's actually just copy this part here and set it up as well. So copy it, go over to our finish activity and set it up here. So now we just need to find the name of the toolbar that I'm using in the activity finish, and I call it toolbar finish activity. So here, binding, let me see why that is an error here, toolbar finish activity. Okay, so that's how the name was. And now I'm checking if the action bar is not null. And if it's not null, then we're going to set up the display home up enabled. And then we had this on-click listener assigned to the toolbar. Let me put it together so it will be a little cleaner. So now we can do the same thing in our finish activity. So here, this will of course be the toolbar finish activity. Set navigation on-click listener on back pressed. So once we click the back button, it will call the on back pressed method, which is the same thing as if you were clicking on the back button. And then we have the finish button inside of this activity finish, which is this button right here. Let me go over to the code, or actually split and click on the finish button, and it will jump to the finish button here, as you see. Actually, so you double click on it, on this finish button, or once click on it, and it will give you the button itself with its ID. Okay, so now let's go ahead and set up this button. So binding dot finish button with an on-click listener, so that we can actually close the current activity. So if we do that, it will close the current finish activity. But if we don't close the exercise activity once we jump to the finish activity, then we have an error, or we will have a problem, because we will jump back to the exercise activity, which by itself doesn't have much to offer at this point. So we need to go back to the start activity. So you could of course have an intent here that sends you back to the main activity, but then you are building a big stack of activities that are still active in that stack. And by finishing the activity, you're closing the current screen. And then in this case, what it would do is it would jump to the last existing and open activity, which should be our main activity. So let's go to our exercise activity and now find the right spot where we want to jump over to the finish activity. And I hope you figured it out. It's basically going to be once we are done with the timer for our exercise. So let's find the onFinish method in here. And we have two. We have one inside of the set rest progress bar, and then one inside of the exercise one. So here, set exercise progress bar, there we had this onFinish method. And we checked whether we are inside of the current position exercise thingy, right? And then we also notified dataset changed. So what we can do now is we can put all of this code and only do it once we still, or as long as we still have exercises. And then in the alternative case where we currently say toast make text, congratulations, you have completed the 7-minute workout. Let's get rid of that and actually finish our current activity, which will close the exercise activity at this point. And at the same time, I want to jump over to the exercise finish activity that we just set up. So let's create an intent with this as the first parameter, which is the context, and then the finish activity class Java as the activity that we want to jump to. And now I'm getting an error with this intent here. Let me see if it imported the wrong intent class for me. Doesn't seem like it added intent at all. Or maybe it's under util or so. So what we need is the content intent. Well, there it is. Content intent. So let me see why that problem occurs. So this... okay, yeah. So the problem here, and this is something we have not seen yet, but this is something that is really important as well, is we need to add more details to this, to the this keyword. Because now this is not going to be at this point our class that we think it is. It's not going to be the exercise activity, but if you hover over it, you see it will be the countdown timer. Because this countdown timer is an object itself. So now when you're using the this keyword, you're always talking about the context of your current class. And the current class that we're creating here is an object countdown timer. So this entire code here, if you look at it, let me put that into a separate line here, like so. This entire code, this here, is an object that we're creating. And if you're using the this keyword, then it will use the nearest class, so to speak, in which it exists. So if you have a nesting situation, then it will take the one that is in its current nesting state. So if it's the this and the countdown timer, and let's say you had another class inside of, or create another object inside of this countdown timer, and then you use this, then it will be this internal object. And now, as we're using the countdown timer, it will be the countdown timer that is used by this. So how do we get around this? How can we use this with our exercise activity? Well, we can do that by using this add exercise activity. So you add this add plus the name of the activity class that you want to pass as the context. So this will be the package context for our intent now. And now we just need to make sure that we start this intent. So start activity with this intent. Okay, so now let's try it out. So it will close the current exercise activity and it will jump over to the exercise finish activity. So let's jump into it, and it jumps through all of the exercises in as quick as possible fashion. In our case, in 1 second per exercise / per rest phase. And then once it's fully done, it will jump to the finish activity, hopefully. We will see that. And side blank, finished, there we are. So then we have our end activity, and if we click on the back button, it will go back to the aforementioned or before existing activity that still is in the stack. And in our case, it's still going to be our main activity. Now, if you for some reason would finish here as well, and then you would finish the exercise activity as well as the finish activity, then you would end up closing the entire application. So don't do that, because you want to make sure that the user stays inside of your app. So you should always have one activity being active and running and not finished, unless you want to actually close the application when something happens. Okay, so that's pretty much it for this video. I hope you managed to build this by yourself, or at least some parts of it, even if you were struggling at some points and if you had to look things up and jump back to older lectures or even watched this video until the end. I think it's really important that you try as many things as possible now, because now you should be really confident at least trying these standard things, such as using on-click listeners, such as importing or implementing view binding, using intents. All of this stuff should be rather simple. The only challenging part, I would say, would have been this thing where you are moving to another activity once the timer is done. And this is something that is hopefully an issue where you got stuck, because then you hopefully also started searching for solutions and maybe found the solution yourself, because that's how you actually learn programming, not just by watching me how I do this stuff, but by actually running into issues and trying to fix them. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this little challenge. See you in the next video.